Okay, let's unpack this. Think about the last time you took a walk, maybe through a park or some rough grassland.
That sort of post-holiday justification walk.
Exactly, and you're focused on the path, and you almost always see them, those little piles of dirt and grass.
The humble ant nest.
Humble ant nests, yeah. And for most of us, the first thought is pest control.
Right, pest control. And that dismissive attitude is pretty much the starting point for the research from Kesser and Steen. We used to give ants a little credit, you know.
We saw them as guards in the garden, right,
Yeah.
keeping aphids in check.
Exactly. Useful, but still a bit of a nuisance.
But our deep dive today, which is inspired by those notes and some really compelling new findings from an expert at Aarhus University's Institute for Ecoscience, it just blows that perception out of the water.
It really does.
We're here to talk about how these mounds are not just guards. They are, and this is a great phrase, monumental architects of local life. They're ecosystem gardeners.
Yeah, that's the core idea. The expert even calls them small oases of life. And the new data shows they're much more important for biodiversity than we previously thought. We have to start seeing them as like critical infrastructure.
And here's the kicker, the thing that really tells you how valuable they are. In Denmark, these ant nests, the Myra tern, they're actually protected.
Garadad.
So there's a simple legal obligation not to damage them. And that status alone should signal to you that something really important is going on here.
It completely shifts the framework, doesn't it? We're moving from a conversation about pest control to one about, well, essential life support systems.
So if we look past that pile of dirt, how does it actually work? I mean, what are the mechanics inside that make this little mound an ecological engine?
It really starts with the basics, the inputs. These ants are just incredible scavengers.
Okay.
They're constantly dragging dead insects, bits of plants, sometimes even small dead animals back to the nest. And this isn't just, you know, tidying up. This is high-level nutrient cycling.
So when you say they enrich the soil, is this a subtle thing, or are we talking about a really significant chemical hotspot?
Oh, it's extremely significant and highly localized. All that decomposition introduces this huge concentrated surge of nutrients, carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, right into the soil around the nest.
So it creates a little island of fertility.
A very rich island, especially in places that are otherwise nutrient poor, like a heathland. It completely changes the local soil chemistry.
So they're tiny fertilizer factories.
Yeah.
But I think the thermal dynamics, the heat, is what really sets them apart. Can you tell us about that heating effect?
Right. The heating effect is just critical. I mean, the structure of the nest itself, all that organic matter packed together, plus the metabolic heat from thousands of ants.
Their bodies.
Just thousands of tiny bodies. It all works together to warm the nest and the soil around it. It becomes this localized early season heater.
And the research shows this basically acts like a magnet for other species. It's sort of a 5-star spa resort for cold-blooded creatures.
That's a great analogy. It creates a microclimate that offers a huge survival advantage. The top of the nest literally functions as a vacation colony for beetles, lizards, even adders.
Why there specifically?
Because in the early spring or just on a cool morning, that warmth lets them heat their bodies up so much faster.
So they can get going earlier in the day.
Exactly. It jumpstarts their metabolism. They can hunt sooner, breed sooner. It's a literal head start on the competition every single day.
That makes total sense for animals. But what about the plants? Because this leads to what the research calls the double bloom effect, which is just phenomenal.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting. You have two forces working together, that localized heat and the super concentrated nutrients we just talked about.
Okay.
Those two things allow certain plants, which often can't survive on the poor heathland soil, to thrive right there on the anthill.
So they become these little specialized botanical islands.
Precisely. And because of the extra warmth, these plants bloom much, much faster than the exact same species just a few feet away. And the consequence of that is massive. The anthill effectively creates two distinct flowering seasons in one spot. An early one on the nest and the normal one on the heath around it.
And for insects, what's the real-world impact of having that dual season?
It's a lifeline. For pollinators, for anything that feeds on nectar and pollen, it's a huge buffer. If a species emerges a bit early, or if the main bloom is late because of the weather...
There's an early buffet ready for them.
Exactly. It's an early food source that can sustain a population that might otherwise just starve. It's a huge deal for their survival.
And we know this because the Aarhus expert was I mean, incredibly rigorous.
Oh, absolutely. This wasn't just observation. She was out there with a spade, digging holes right next to the nests, both the red heath ant nests and the yellow meadow ant ones, and measuring everything. Temperature gradients, nutrient levels, the effect on roots.
Above and below ground?
Both. You need that hard data to prove just how foundational this role really is.
And that data leads us to probably the most incredible story in this whole deep dive. A case study in, well, extreme interdependence.
Deception, really?
Yes, the Alcon Blue butterfly, the endangered Blowvogel.
This is pure co-evolutionary espionage. I mean, this butterfly is so tightly linked to these ants that it literally only exists on heathlands where they are present.
So walk us through the life of the caterpillar. It's a pretty high-stakes journey.
It is. The adult butterfly lays its eggs on a specific plant, the marsh gentian or clickinsian. The larva hatches and just, eats the seeds for a while.
Okay, pretty standard so far.
Very standard. But then, once it's big enough, it does something amazing. It drops to the ground. And at that moment, it activates its infiltration system.
Infiltration system.
It starts to emit a very specific sound, a vibration, and a chemical smell that is identical to a highly prized ant queen larva.
Real way. It's impersonating royalty.
The highest royalty, the droning. The worker ants find it, and their programming just kicks in. They think they found a lost future queen.
So they rescue it.
They pick it up, carry it deep inside the nest into the safest part of the colony, and then they start to stop feed it. They prioritize feeding this caterpillar over almost everything else.
And the cost of this, the research says this can be catastrophic for the ants.
It can be. The ants sometimes neglect their own actual offspring to feed this imposter, which can literally lead to the collapse of the entire colony.
Wow. So it's eating their future while being protected by the adults.
It's brutal, but it's also completely mesmerizing. The caterpillar just winters over in the warmth and safety of the nest, and then in the spring, it emerges as a beautiful blue butterfly and flies away.
That is just an unbelievable level of reliance. It's not just a nice place to hang out. It's an absolute requirement for the species to even exist.
That's the core takeaway. And the sources point out that 11 of the 12 blue butterfly species in Denmark thrive near ants. And for a few of them, like the Alcon Blue, it's non-negotiable. No ants, no butterfly.
And that story is the perfect pivot to the bigger picture here, right? The biodiversity crisis.
Exactly. This isn't just a cool nature story. Protecting these tiny mounds is a key piece in solving a much, much larger problem.
And the crisis is severe. Just for context for everyone listening.
Yeah.
In Denmark alone, nearly 2,000 species of animals, plants, and fungi are threatened with extinction.
And you can track that decline using the Alcon Blue as an indicator. It's vanished from over 15% of its known sites in just the last 40 years. And that loss is tied directly to how we manage the landscape.
So the expert from Aarhus points to this core issue, and it's not always direct destruction, but something she calls homogeneity.
Yes, human-induced homogeneity. We treat an environment like a heathland as one big, uniform block that has to be kept in a single, static state.
And that's the enemy of biodiversity.
It's the greatest enemy. We forget that historically, these landscapes were always changing. A lightning strike would cause a forest fire, creating a temporary heath. Then, over decades, trees would slowly grow back.
So there was always a mix of habitats.
A constantly changing mosaic, exactly. You had fresh burns, open fields, young forest, old forest, all at the same time. Now, our modern methods, constant grazing that keeps grass at one height or big machines cutting everything uniformly, we stop that cycle.
We create a monoculture of habitat.
And in doing that, we destroy the sensitive ant nests that need a bit of stability within that changing landscape.
So the call to action for, say, landscape managers isn't to stop managing, but to manage differently.
To embrace variation. Uniformity is the problem. Keeping a herd of sheep on the same patch all season creates that dead, homogeneous landscape. The expert's principle is simple. We need to do something different to get something different.
Which brings us to what you, the listener, can actually do. But first, there's a quick and kind of sad note about the municipal level.
Yeah, it's an irony, really. The biologists working for local authorities, they know all of this. They understand the science. But budget constraints often force them into those cheaper, uniform management strategies.
The money dictates the strategy, and biodiversity loses.
Unfortunately, that's often the case, which is why the power of experimentation can really lie with the individual gardener.
In our own backyards.
Exactly. The expert is so encouraging about this. Her advice is simple. Let the soil nests be. don't see them as a problem to be eradicated. And she shared this fantastic personal story.
What did she do?
Well, she decided to leave the ant nests in her garden alone, and then she deliberately sowed wild native pea flowers, the Wild Jammerhande Arteblomster.
Which are the host plants for the butterflies.
For many of the common blue butterflies, yes, and the combination of the existing ant nests and the right host plant. It led to a huge, noticeable increase in the number of blue butterflies in her garden.
That's direct proof. Small actions, big results. So the final takeaway isn't just plant more wildflowers, it's more complex than that.
That's the final knowledge nugget we want you to leave with, yeah. It's not enough to just scatter seeds. To really help, you have to think about the entire life cycle of the insects you want to support.
A whole system.
The whole system. You need to provide these little patches of different landscape types in your own garden. A patch for host plants, maybe some long grass for shelter, and yes, a protected patch with a thriving ant nest.
So we've gone from an irritating pile of dirt, as mentioned in Kesser and Steen's work, to a legally protected life support system, one that creates warmth and nutrients and microclimates for species like the Alcon Blue. And if you want more of these deep dives, these aha moments that change how you see the world, make sure you subscribe.
To sum it up, the findings from Aarhus University are clear. The ant nest is a tiny architect of life. It creates the very foundation that allows these fragile, complex species to survive. And the biggest threat we pose is often just our desire for uniformity.
And the biggest help we can offer is variation and just small-scale, careful, non-interference,
Okay.
especially letting those nests stand.
Right. And that brings us to a final thought for you to carry with you. If a small, common thing like an ant nest can support an entire food web and help solve a piece of the biodiversity crisis,
What other irritating things in our own environment? The weeds, the dead wood, the messy corners. Have we been mistakenly trying to get rid of when we should have just been letting them create life?